Hello everybody. I'm very happy to welcome you all to this video lecture on methods of data collection. If we just look at the topic, it is not very new to us. We know the meaning of data and we have heard the various methods of data collection. But still, we have to have a profound knowledge on these methods of data collection in order to ensure the quality of research. Before going into depth about the methods of data collection, it is very essential for us to get to know the steps in research process. As we all know that research is a process of search of knowledge. It is a scientific process of investigation. Everywhere the research has been taking place in order to find the solutions to the existing problem. As we all know that research is not a single step process. It comprises of many steps which are interrelated and highly associated with one another. If we are going to see the very first step in research process is the definition of research problem. The very first step is the identification of the research problem. The second step is a review of literature. The collection of the essential information, the prior existing review of literature, all are supposed to get collected in order to know the status of the research problem at the previous level and also to the current situation. We are supposed to also follow the formulation of hypothesis. A hypothesis is a tentative statement which establishes the relationship between the variables. Research design. Research design here refers to the outline of the project, of what we are going to do, what type of samples we are going to take, what type of methods we are going to incorporate in the research process. And here comes the next step as the data collection, followed by analyze data and then interpretation and report writing. A research process is coming to an end with the report writing, which comprises of the important findings, suggestions and concluding remarks. And all these things are possible only by collecting the data, analyzing it and interpreting it. So data collection is a very important process. According to me, I feel that the data collection is nothing but it is like an input process. You process the data which refers to the analyzing part and then you come out with interpretations and concluding remarks, they are the output. So the quality of the research mainly depends on the type of the data which you are employed into it. So data collection is a very important step in a research process. So let us see in deep about it. What I mean by the word data? The word data is not very new to us. Each and every time when we are stepping into the research, we are very much aware of this particular word which is sounding very high. So data is nothing but a systematic record of a particular quantity, or I can say it is a collection of facts or figures used for a very specific purpose. It is a systematic record. Alright, now what can we have as an example for a data? So being academicians, just let us take the marks of the student. So for a particular student, we are supposed to collect the marks of him that is scored by him at every semester. Or we are going to take a particular course, what is his marks? And what about the performance in the examination as a whole? And what about the pass percentage, what he is scoring it? And what a particular year is scoring it. So all these things are data for us. If you are going to see a company, we can say that how many employees are there in that particular company, and what about their working time, and what about their profit, and what many products they are processing it, how many products they are just selling it, and how many persons they are having a lot of the dealings and exchange of the inputs or the raw materials or whatever it might be. If I'm just going to have a specific purpose, like I'm going to collect the information about an institution or an organization, first of all I need to collect data, because information is nothing but an organized form of the data. So data is nothing but As here mentioned, it is the collection of facts or the figures, or you have a systematic record of a particular quantity. So the word data is not very new to us, and since we are already having an awareness of the meaning of the data, we will see the other ways of types and other ways of representing the other sources of data as follows. Alright, as I was mentioning earlier, data are of two types. The very first type is a qualitative data, and the second type is a quantitative data. So, qualitative data deals with the attributes. The quantitative data deals with numbers. So, I can say the qualitative data are non-numerical in nature. Okay, what do you mean by the term attributes? It refers to the characteristics, it refers to the qualities. For example, if here has some balls are hanging, if I'm just going to ask number of red balls or the number of balls which are blue in color. So if I'm going to say like that, my question is if I'm going to ask how many balls are there, immediately we'll be counting and just giving you the answer. Okay, fine. So and so our number of balls are there. But we are just going to talk about the qualitative data. So how many balls are red in color? How many balls are bigger in size? How many balls are small in size? So here also we are going to get a data, but it is based on the attributes. Now as academicians, we might have deal with a lot of attributes, for example intelligence, the creativity, and we are going to see about the honesty, integrity of the students, and all these things are coming under the attributes. And here quantitative, it's very simple for us to get to know how many students are there, how many have participated, how many courses are there, how many institutions are there, how many organizations. So just it will be giving only about the numerical data. So depending on the research, so what I'm going to research, so what about my sample, what type of people I'm just going to collect the data, who are my respondents, so what type of data I'm just going to collect. So to all these particular questions, your data is going to give you a lot of answers to it. So suppose in case if I'm going to just collect a data which is pertaining only to the attributes, then I call that as a qualitative data. If my particular data is going to be only numbers, then I can going to say that it is going to be a quantitative data in nature. And this quantitative data has other classification like discrete and continuous. So discrete in the sense it is taking only the exact values. Continuous in case it will be taking a range of values. So it is very quite common. So if I'm just going to ask you a question, so how many items are there or how many glasses are there, you'll just tell me that it is 1, 2, 3, 4 are there. Because you have a particular glasses having juices of different colors are here. Suppose if I'm going to ask you a question, what is the calories of energy you are going to get after consumption of all these things? Then definitely we won't be given a single exact value. Suppose I'm going to say that the calorie is like maybe 86.4, and it is not a discrete value but rather it is a continuous value. So discrete in the sense it will be taking exact values. So what blood group you are, and maybe exactly the number, how many people are there. So all these will give the exact values. But when come to the continuous, regarding the height, regarding the weight, regarding the calories, regarding the percentage, so they will have a continuous range values. So the quantitative data is taking two classifications like discrete and continuous. And then we'll discuss something about sources of data collection. Okay, fine, I'm going to collect the data. I know what's the meaning of data. It is actually a collection of facts and figures. But from where can I collect the data? What are the sources are there? Actually, there are two sources of data collection. One is the primary data and another one is the secondary data. As the word here itself sounds the primary, and then the other one it is secondary. So primary data here refers to a very first hand data that you are going to collect from the respondents, and it is highly direct. So, as a researcher, if I want to collect the data, I myself go into the field, I just meet the respondents, and I start collecting what are the essential facts or figures which are very essential for me, which I put it as a word called data, which is essential for my research. So, when I do that, when my source of data collection is of that kind, then I can say that it is a primary source of data collection. For example, if I'm going to take a census, now what people will be doing at the time of census, automatically they come to each one's house, they start asking some data regarding our name, regarding our residential things, regarding our various aspects they will be asking about in census. So here, when I'm going to say that the person is receiving a very first-hand information, he's not going to inquire about you to somebody else, or he's not going to collect the essential data what is necessary for him to be feeded in that census from some persons to you, like your relatives or like your friends. No, it's a very direct way. He directly comes to you, he approaches you, he meets you, and he start collecting the data whatever is needed for him. And this is the example for the primary data source. So this is all about the primary. It is very first hand and it is very direct. So I can say that it is a very fresh information what he is getting about you. The very fresh data collections, nobody has not collected, and no evaluation has been done so far, no analysis, no interpretation. So very first data, I can say the very fresh data what he is getting, you call that is the primary. Then what is secondary? Obviously it will be the opposite of the primary. So it is actually a derived one, it is an indirect one. So if I'm going to have a secondary source of data, it means that someone else have collected it initially and I'm just going to use the already collected one. So here I can take it as an example like books, journal, or a government records. So here it is very quite common. Suppose in case if I'm going to have a research on the education institutions, if I'm going to say, first of all I used to fix a particular area of my study, and then I used to go and explore how many institutions are there, but it is a tedious process. So I can refer any government records of just to know how many schools are there of primary nature, how many schools are there of higher secondary, and how many colleges are there and how many universities are there in particular area of my study. So I can take all those things. Suppose if I'm going to just check about the number of harassment cases against women, how many cases are being filed over that. So I can get all this information which is previously been recorded earlier. And that way I can be having such sources of data collection for my research. And books have been already published things, so whatever data what is essential for me, I start extracting the book. And also the same way the journal also, if you're going to say that I just want to know, suppose what are the different methods of sampling, if I want to know, already we have many number of books and many number of articles on it, so I just start extracting the essential informations. Maybe I can say that the numerical data or qualitative data, so whatever it might be, whatever is essential for my research, I started to just take it from the other sources which have been already available. I'm not going to take any extra efforts, I'm not going to go and meet them personally and get all type of data what is essential for me. I'm just going to use already existing data available to my convenience. Whatever I need, I'm just going to take it off. Whatever I don't want, I just leave it. So this is all about the secondary data. So primary data here refers to a very first hand and direct thing, and here a secondary data here refers to the derived one, and it is an indirect way. As I'm not involved into it directly, I just refer to this particular source as an indirect one. And in the case of primary, I have my personal interference, I have my personal presence over there, so it is a direct way of collecting the data. So these are the two sources of data collection. And now coming to the main topic, what are the methods of data collection? See, there are so many methods to collect the data, and it all depends on the researcher, the type of the research problem, and the type of the sample, and all these things are playing a very important role in choosing the type of method to collect data. So, observation, interview, survey method, questionnaire, schedule, and case study. These are the most common methods which are employed in research to collect the data. And it doesn't mean that there is a best method or this method is very not useful or it is not applicable. We have no such things as of the literature review so far, because each method has its own merits and demerits. They have their own limitations and they have their own advantages also. So depending on the research situation, depending on the research problem, as I said before, and the nature of the sample, it all depends on what method you are supposed to use it. And also it mainly depends on the convenience of the researcher, because he may be very flexible with any of the methods, or he may be suitable with the one method but not with the another. And you may ask a lot of questions like, is there only one method we are supposed to employ in the research? It's not like that. It's depending on your research problem. It is depending on how you have formulated your hypothesis, what type of variables you have taken for your study, and what type of relationship you have just established between your variables and what you are supposed to prove. So depending on your research, depending on your own research problem only, you can decide your method of data collection. And it doesn't need to be the same for everybody. If I'm going to choose a method of schedule, there is need for it to choose a method of a questionnaire for you. You can choose a survey method, you can go with an interview. And some research, it based on some case studies, because case studies itself a kind of research. So we'll be seeing in the forthcoming lectures also. Observation is a kind how you collect the data, even that is enough for a certain type of research problems. So each and every method has its own advantages and limitations. And as I said before, there is no such method is called as a very best method, but we have some common methods which are being used to collect data. So they are convenient methods and flexible methods. Alright, now we'll see about the methods of data collection in brief. And first, let me move on to the observation method. So when I just say the observation method, the organ which plays a very important role is our eyes. So they actually receive a lot of things from the outside, what we are going to observe, and what type of environment you are going to create for the observation method to take place. Alright. So there is a lot of difference between what you see and what you observe. I hope you won't deny it. We always see, but sometimes only we observe it. For example, if I'm going to say some shoes I'm being given there, so you'll be just looking at the shoes. But how many of you will be looking at their brand which is being given there? So what type of product it is? That's the name of the brand over here. So it is very quite less also, I can say that not everyone will be seeing to it. We are very good at seeing the particular objects which are displayed before us, but how many have started to observe it? So that depends on the individual. For example, if I can put it in a simple way, because before you some 10 objects have been displayed and they are asking us to just to look into it, they are going to see into it, then say they are going to ask some questions from the 10 objects. But do you think that not every person will be just looking at the 10 objects so much full of attention? They just look, no? Fine. Some will be having in mind about the number of objects, then about the color of the objects, about the size of the objects. But some go even more beyond it. They start observing each and every particular object with utmost attention, with utmost, will be aware of it, will be very cautious of it. Okay, fine, what the object is exactly and what is the thing and what are all the way it differs from one another. So this is how it's making what you see and what you observe distinct. Maybe when we go with the certain movies and when we go with certain crime stories, novels like that, we used to say, no, the investigator will be not just saying, he will start observing. So as he start observing, he try to resolve the cases. So when you go on with much attention, you will be able to resolve and you will be able to gain a lot of in-depth things. And of course, you will be gaining a lot of insights also. When we do certain things with utmost attention, then automatically we will be getting a lot of in-depth into it. Okay, so I hope you will be a little aware of now the difference between what you see and what you observe. Seeing, just you pay your sight to it and you just go away. But when you go with the observe, you always render your full attention and you are very much cautious and aware of what is happening around you. So that is the difference between your seeing and observing. And suppose if I'm going to collect data by using the method of observation, what are the points you are supposed to remember while doing observation? What should be observed? And how the observation should be recorded? And how the accuracy of the observation to be ensured? So it is very, very important. The very first thing is you should know what you're going to observe. You should fix your target. Okay, I'm just going to observe it, because when I'm going to fix a target only, all my attention will be focused on the object that I'm going to observe. It can be a person or it can be object or it can be anything. But still, I should fix what I'm going to observe. That is very, very essential, because there are many chances for the observer to get distracted and to get his attention get scattered due to some external influence also. So the observer who is going to do this observation method, who is going to observe, must be very cautious and very much aware of the object that he is going to observe. And also, we are supposed to record the observations, because only after then we'll have to collect the essential data, what is very essential for us, because at the time of observation we will not be able to record all the things what is essential for us. So it is very good to record the observation so that we can just replay and we can able to connect all the aspects or the instance what took place the time of observations, and it will be very helpful for us to go on with the interpretations and all those kinds. And how accuracy of the observation? So I'm just going to observe it, but is it accurate? It is exact. So how to ensure it? So all these things an observer should be keeping in mind while doing the observation method. Now there are different types of observation. So here we go along with the structured, unstructured, participant, non-participant, disguised, controlled and uncontrolled. As I said before, there are different methods to collect data and each method has its own types. So here observation is one of the methods to collect data, and even in observation you have various types are there. So again I'm telling, it all depends upon the researcher, it all depends upon the situation where he is circumscribed himself to it, and what type of observation is possible to employ. Suppose if I'm going to use the method of observation to collect the data, so in that what type of observation I can apply in order to get the required data. So we'll see one by one, and each one method it will be quite interesting also with its own limitations and advantages. Now we'll move on to the very first one called a structured observation. So the word itself sounds well, it is structured. So in the structured observation, we are just going to carefully define the nature of the observing environment. So I'm just going to define here what I'm going to observe. I'm not going to observe everything. I'm just going to particularly focus what the target to be observed. So here when I mention the word target here, it is the object which I'm going to focus my entire observation on. So I'll be having a careful definition, and then I'll be having a pakka identification of the recording type. So how I'm going to record it? So what is the style I'm going to use to record my observed information? And I'm just going to standardize the condition of observation. On what condition I'm just going to observe it. And also I'm going to have the selection of data required for observation. I'm not just going to comprise everything to observe it, but I'm just going to have the particular thing who I'm just going to observe. So what are things essential for me to do the observation? So maybe we can have like this. Maybe you have a group of students, maybe a group of 5 students, and that you are going to send them for a final competition is like that. So maybe for example, I will go ahead with an elocution. So 5 persons you are just testing. maybe you are going to sit as a person like a judge or something like that, you are going to think, and you are going to make the students to start their elocution on any topic. So if that is particular the case, then automatically you are going to just observe each and every person, so you know what is your target is all about. And then how we are going to record it, you know it, whether you're going to go with a manual recording or whether you're going to do any system recording, so audio recording, so entirely you're going to record everybody, so it all depends on you. So on what conditions, so definitely you will be setting up the environment for the people to in order to present their own content, and then you will be start going ahead with that. And then the selection of the data required for observation. So what are the things you are going to make the observation so far? So what type of data you are just going to go ahead, whether it is going to be a numerical data or whether it is going to be a qualitative data, because here it all talks about the performance. And then you will be more cautious about your qualitative rather than about your quantitative. So these things are very essential when we are doing a structured observation. So in the structured observation, everything is actually standardized, everything is actually a predefined environment. Now what about the unstructured? So when you go along with unstructured observation, it is very quite clear. In structured, you go with a systematic way, with a predefined way, but in unstructured, you just don't need to do all those things. You just allow the respondents to act in their own way, and you're not going to give any type of structure. So you're just going to observe the things in their own settings. So no such predefinement, no such of setting up of control of any other things you're going to make. Rather, you are going to exercise the observation at your own pace, in your own way. Now we'll move on to the participant observation. So this participant observations are having the role of the persons who is observer as a member of the group. So here the recording takes place in a very natural way. See, it is quite simple. Maybe we can take an example like this. You want to just look at the performance of your own team members. If that is the case, then for example, if the coach is supposed to look how the people are actually playing it. So he has to observe how the particular players are playing and what type of strategies they are using at times of the risk situations. So if that is the case, then automatically the coach is stepping as one of the members, and he's a member of the team, and he's also start to play with the team members. Then automatically, rather than coach being observing far away from the playing environment, and if he is a part of the game, then definitely he will be able to gain a lot of insights and a lot of understandings will be there about the players. So that it will be very easy for him to gather more information, and also it is a time for him to verifying the truth. So somebody will be telling that coach that player A is playing very well and all these things, but when he is stepping inside the game, and the coach himself will be coming to know whether the player A is playing well or not, or is simply just information what has been given to him by others. So this is the way of how the participant observation is taking place. So observer will be one of the members, and he will be recording the behavior in a more natural way. Of course, because there is no need of any exaggeration, because he himself is seeing it, he himself is feeling, he himself is experiencing, he himself is observing it. So he records the natural behavior and he gathers lots of information. And here once again I can say, he himself verifying the truth, what is being heard and what is being received as a statement. So this is a kind of participant observation. And here also we can say that maybe in the companies also sometimes when the project leader start working with the team members, then he'll come to know the plus and minus and about the strength and challenges and the weakness of the particular project also, and also the project members. So instead of just monitoring them, instead of just going ahead with their reports, when the project leader is himself involved along with the team members, when he is plugged into the field work, then automatically he will be coming to know the pros and cons of it. So here now we'll move on to the non-participant observation. So it's very simple. Here observer is not the member. So obviously he will not be able to sense the feel of the members. This is why it quite takes place, Maybe for example, the same example was giving for a participant. Instead of coach being the member, if the coach simply observes not being a part of the game and he is just monitoring how the game is taking place and all those things. So he is just not the member. So he will not be able to sense the real feel of the members because he is just observing out of the environment what the observation is being taking place. So this is also a kind of observation where the participation of the observer is not there. And here we'll move on to the another kind of observation like disguised observation. So members of the group are really unaware that they are observed. So here the real feelings are observed. So yes, of course we can take it this way. For example, if you are going to say some students that, because generally when we say students know that you are observed, so you are monitored, so you have to exhibit your performance, automatically they'll be having a fear, so they don't do it well, they don't perform because the fear itself kills the beautiful chance of expressing their talents. So in order to avoid that thing, suppose we are going to say that make a student simply you just kindly come out, you sing a song, you dance it, and just to tell them that you are not observed. So nothing, we are not making them to know that somebody is just observing, somebody is just giving a look on us, somebody is cautiously watching us. So we are not going to give such alarms to them. So if that is the case, then automatically there will be a spontaneous way of response. So simply if you're going to say that in even a company, simply you call for a discussion, but not in a more formal, not in a more structured way. We just go and carry on a discussion, automatically we'll have a spontaneous flow or exchange of ideas, it takes place. And that time, the real feelings, whenever we have the spontaneous we have the real feelings of being observed at that time. So this is also a kind of observation where the respondents are not aware that they are being observed. And controlled observation. So the word itself gives you a lot of meaning. You have a definite prearranged and it involves experimental procedure. Yes. So generally when you go and discuss something about the word control, it takes place in the experimental kind of research. So where we take with the controlled situations and we have two groups of there, one will be controlled and one will be the experimental group. And then you just know what is going to take place and you will record all the observations. So in experimental, everything is in controlled condition. There is no intervention of any other extraneous variable is there. So we have the role of dependent and independent variables and we just see what takes place when all the situations have been under controlled. And of course, the another one is the uncontrolled observation. So this takes place quite a natural setting. So we always not going to constrain or not going to construct any predefined conditions. We just allow the things to take place very naturally, very spontaneously. So no such conditions we are going to emphasize on this. Suppose if I'm going to find the movement of the birds or about the animals' expressions, so how they react, we just don't create any conditions, because when you go with the Discovery channels, they always go with things, they always wait for the natural things to take place spontaneously. So you have called as an uncontrolled because it is the field. We cannot go and exercise any control over the things or the objects over there because it is not a laboratory to do so. So since it is an external world, we cannot do all those things. We cannot exercise an environment where everything is under our control. No. So at that particular time, when my research demands such kind of observation, then I have to wait for the spontaneous picturization of the situation to take place. So these are the kinds of the observation method. But here we have our own merits as well as the limitations. So no chance of bias. So here, whatever the observer is observing, he is just recording it. And here it is related to the present situation because there is no need to correlate with any prior experience or prior situations or the past instance that need not be correlated at all. And the independent of respondents' willingness I'm not going to ask any permission. I'm going to observe you. Can I observe you or not? No, there is no need for that at all. So there is no need to ask the respondent's willingness. The researcher can kindly come, can stand for a while, can just create his own environment. He has created good situation. He can just exercise the observation method, and he can collect out all the data. What is essential for him? Suppose, for example, if I'm just going to get to know the type of food which people are preferring in a particular restaurant. Suppose I'm going to sit for a while, maybe just 1 hour I'm going to sit, and what type of ice creams they're ordering, if that is the case. So it is very easy for us to just observe what flavor they are opting for it, or what type of ice cream, what brand of ice cream they are opting for it. So it's very easy. We need not go and even ask the respondent, what type of ice cream. Just simply we can relax, sit in a place, and we can start doing our observation without the respondent's willingness. Because I'm not going to ask what type of ice cream you liked it, what flavor you like. There's no need at all to go and ask them. Because sometimes, in some situations, the respondents will be ready to cooperate with us and giving us their own opinion. But sometimes they don't. And many times our research process or a research problem, when you go with the data collection, it is just difficult and the most challenging aspect, because all that we want about the real data, not the manipulation of the data. But at that particular time, when we want to make the accuracy of the data, the validity, reliability, all those things are very essential when we talk about the consistency of data. So at that particular time, the respondents' cooperation is very much indeed, because with your full involvement only, with your full contribution only, we can able to get the right data. So not simply they are giving without any vague responses, or the lack of interest in participating in the data collection. So all these things also disturbs the flow of the research over there. And here there is a lack of verbal expressions. Yeah, of course, the researchers need not even talk anything, and the respondents also, there is no need to give only a verbal response. Everything is just you go with observation. So once you start observing it, then automatically you start collecting the data, and there is no role of verbal expressions over here. And also sometimes there are some research cases where it demands verbal, but sometimes there is no need of verbal expression at all. By the method of observation itself, we can able to extract a lot of data required for us. Limitations. Of course, it is highly expensive, because you have to go ahead with an observation, and you are not going to have any sort of proper way of to communicate to the respondent. Sometimes you take the willingness, sometimes you don't take the willingness, and if that is the case, setting up of an observation method is quite expensive also. So because it is depend on the situation what I'm going to take it, and also of course it is a time consuming process also. When I'm going to say expensive, it is worthwhile of time also and cost also, and only limited information you can be getting, because I'm just going to observe the fellow in a particular environment, in a particular situation. So only very limited information I can get it about his choice, about his likes, but not in more depth about it. So only I can get only some few information about the thing I'm going to observe it. And of course there is an influence of external factors also. So every time what we observe will not be the same. Maybe on our side there will be a lot of disturbance, and maybe the respondent side, the persons whom we are observing, the object we are observing is also subjected to some external factors influence. So at that time the reliability or the consistency of the data being obtained through this method is also subjected to a lot of questions. So maybe you can say that, suppose if you are going to observe certain aspects, but people who are not involved into it, the observation may again disturb or may again cause a lot of influence on you as an observer. So these things are quite normal in happening, this method of observation. As I said before, each method has its own merits and limitations. So we cannot say that observation is the best method or observation is not the best method, nothing like that. It all depends on the research problem, it all depends on the researcher, it all depends on the sample what have been chosen for your study. So such things are playing a very important role. So in this video lecture we have just given an introduction about the methods of data collection, and before which also we have seen about the data, the sources of data and the types of data, and we have just looked into the method of observation in detail. So we'll be seeing the other methods of data collection in the following lecture videos. Thank you.